Are we ready?
We are ready.
1, 2, 3. Everyone ready? BFIT, Sonia, you ready? Everyone ready? Everyone ready. Let's go. Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Janey. I have the honor of serving as president of the most diverse city council in Boston's history, especially now during this critical time in our nation's history that is important more than ever. In addition to serving as president, I have the honor of representing District 7, which includes Roxbury, South End, Dorchester, and Fenway on the City Council. District 7 is the heart of the city of Boston. It is also the place where many of our disparities live. Welcome to What's Going On, a community dialogue with community leaders and the Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. We have representatives today from BFIT, including board members and their executive director, Dr. Aisha Francis. Please welcome, folks. Welcome, everyone. We are here today to talk about their strategic options and to get input from the community on how those plans will impact our community, particularly constituents and stakeholders, not only who utilize BFIT, but stakeholders within the broader community of Nubian Square and Roxbury. This evening, we have brought together folks to create a space for this community dialogue so that we understand what is at stake. I want to welcome representatives from my colleagues in state government. We are joined by Senator Sonia Chang Diaz. We are joined by Representative John Santiago, a staff member from Representative John Santiago. We also have on the call here, as I mentioned, Dr. Aisha Francis, and we have board members including Ron Dorsey, Angela Johnson, Marvin Lusso. Please let me know if I am pronouncing your name correctly. And Claire Waddington. Did I get that right?
Waddington's good.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to give my colleagues in government an opportunity to say a quick welcome. Then we will hear an opening from the representatives from BFIT, and then we're going to go right into questions. So as we shared the flyer and we're promoting this event, we asked people to submit questions so that we could then present those questions and have a good dialogue. We had hoped to broadcast this discussion live. We were having some technical difficulties, so we are recording the conversation, and we will continue to try to work out the technical difficulties so that we can share and continue to gather questions in real time. So without further ado, I want to create space, and I'm going to turn to my sister in service, Sonia Chang Diaz. She has been a dear friend over the years, as she has served this district well. Since becoming a city councilor myself, I've had the opportunity of working in partnership with her. She has been a fierce leader. We are lucky to have her at the State House as the only woman of color in the Senate. Welcome, Senator Sonia Chang Diaz.
Thank you, Madam President. It's wonderful to be here with you, and I want to thank you and your excellent staff for pulling this forum together, and Representative Santiago for teaming up among our three offices to co-host it, as well as thanking the members of the BFIT leadership team for making themselves available to have this transparent dialogue with community members and leadership. I will keep it very brief because I'm eager to get into the dialogue and just say, in the state Senate, I represent the 2nd Suffolk District, which comprises a huge chunk of the city of Boston, but most relevantly for this conversation includes both the South End, where BFIT currently finds its home, and Nubian Square, where BFIT has maybe a year or so ago announced plans to move, as well as several of the neighborhoods from which the BFIT student body hails, of the sort of greater Roxbury area. So this is an issue of primary importance to me, how we're gonna make sure that we preserve the level of service to those students and families that I represent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. I I was glad to partner not only with you, but with my good friend, Representative John Santiago. Unfortunately, he could not be with us this evening as he is overseas, making sure that our soldiers are safe. And so we are joined here by his team member, Corey. So Corey, I want to give you an opportunity to represent our representative. Please.
Thank you so much, Madam President. And thank you to Samuel and Kiara and all the rest of the extraordinary staff you have. It's such a pleasure to work with you guys every day. And thank you so much for putting this event together. So my name is Corey Asman, and I'm from the Office of State Representative John Santiago. Our office represents Roxbury, including parts of Nubian Square, the South End, Fenway, and Back Bay. As you mentioned, unfortunately, the representative could not join us tonight. He was planning on making it, but a small emergency popped up, and unfortunately, he will not be joining us. Our office is here to listen, learn, and amplify your voice, and we're looking forward to learning more at this meeting. So thank you so much again, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so it was really important for me as a city councilor representing District 7 to make sure that I work as much as possible in partnership with my colleagues, not only on the city council, but in state government. And so this area in Nubian Square is represented by Representative Santiago and by Senators Chang Diaz, as well as myself. And so we're coming together to have this community dialogue. At this time, would love to turn it over to Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology for introductions of your team, certainly, and then a brief presentation, and then we will get right into the dialogue. We've got the questions that residents and stakeholders have been submitting, and so we want to get right into that dialogue. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Francis, to introduce your board and to just take us through your presentation.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam President. I'm Aisha Francis. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. I've been in this role for 2 months and worked at the college for 2 years. I am a Boston resident. I've lived in the city 15 years, originally from Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm pleased to have this forum and opportunity to speak to constituents and stakeholders who care about the future of Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. So I want to thank you, President Janey, for pulling this together, and thank you, Senator Chang Diaz, as well as Representative Santiago, for being here and making it known how much you care about what is going on. So I would like the staff to introduce themselves. Two members of my leadership team are with us, and then 2 members of our board's executive committee. So board leadership is very engaged in tonight's conversation as well. And then from there, we'll give a short overview of what Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology does, who we serve, so that we have a level set of information and the same information to guide us through the conversation. Thank you. So let's have Angela and then Marvin, and then Claire and Ron.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam President. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Angela Johnson, and I'm the Chief Advancement Officer for Benjamin Franklin. I've been at the organization for a little over 1.5 years, and my responsibilities are any and all philanthropy fundraising, as well as relationships with our alumni.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marvin Loazo. I am the Dean of Academic Affairs here at Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. And I've been working at the college for about 9 years. And thank you for including me in this conversation.
I'm Claire Wadlington. I am a CFO. I'm a board member. I'm a CFO of a software company, and I am currently the treasurer of the board. And I've been treasurer of finance committee of other organizations that are focused on economic development, such as TechOSO.
And good evening, Madam President. Senator Chang Diaz, great to see you. And please extend my gratitude to Rep. Santiago, who is showing up on many front lines these days. My name is Ron Dorsey. I serve as the vice chair of the board for Benjamin Franklin Institute. I came to the board in 2015 as an ex officio representative for Mayor Walsh when I served as the chief of education for the city of Boston, and have remained a board member post my service in the Walsh administration.
So now if I could have the staff who is manning the special tech, the wizardry.
Yes.
Thank you so
There
much.
we go.
The wizardry worked. Okay. So what we are here to discuss is the go forward strategy for Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. We are at a crossroads in the nation in the sector of healthcare. I'm sorry, not healthcare, higher education. Probably healthcare as well because of the pandemic. So that is certainly on my mind. But next slide, please. Thank you. So this is who we serve. Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology is a minority serving institution. We enroll about 500 students, most of them full-time. We are a commuter campus. We don't have dorms. Most of the students we serve are very low income, 75% students of color. You see the racial and ethnic mix of our students here. Most are Black and Latinx. In addition, we have more than half of our students are first gen college goers. Many are also immigrants. In terms of the representation, 86% identify as men, 14% identify as women. So what this means is that we mostly serve a population of young men of color. Over the past 4 years, we have graduated 350 men of color into trades and technical career fields. 98% of our students receive federal financial aid. So those are Pell Grants. And the average income of the families of our students is $23,800 a year. So that is the average entire family income for households. And the average household is a household of 3. Our students are very well poised to do well in higher education. They don't necessarily think of themselves as college bound until their senior year many times, and many times it's after they graduate. So we are an open enrollment institution. We believe that our philosophy is that getting to college should not be difficult because succeeding in college is difficult enough. So that's who we serve. This is the demographic of people that we feel we are very much uniquely suited to support through an education that changes the trajectory of their lives. Next slide, please. Our mission is vital, and our mission is to be an affordable urban college delivering technical education. And we believe that there are opportunities to change this mission and the mission delivery, not the mission itself, but the way in which we do this work. And we want to do that through a more networked approach, which means that we want to rely more on resources that are already existing, serving the community members that we serve so that we can get stronger together. Here you see there are very many different examples of what that looks like. There is a special blend of higher education and workforce development that we offer that is called a Communiversity. Next slide, please. It relies on cross-sector collaboration. And the other thing that we are moving toward is a shift in the program delivery. And so at some point later during the Q&A, Marvin Loazu will talk about the shifts that we've made leaning toward certificate programs and also into green and clean tech, robotics and automation, virtual and artificial reality. We know that in this region, there is a humongous need for people to go into tech fields that are the future of work. These have been identified by the state and the city as areas of high impact, and they are well paying. So those are the program areas that we're going to deliver in the future. Next slide, please. Our model builds on accelerated job access, which means we want to get people to college and through faster so that they can start earning what they need in order to sustain their families and themselves. Our certificate programs and all of our programs are stackable. What that means is if you complete a certificate at BFIT, you will be able to transition into an associate's degree without losing credits. it's more affordable for people to have that type of education, and it's much more flexible. We are learning from our pandemic experience and from the pivots that we've had to make. We are delivering more courses online than we ever have before, and we will be continuing to do that type of training. Also, we always offered night programs. We're offering more of those now, as well as the traditional daytime models. We have an enduring community network that is getting stronger. The diverse partnerships with community-based organizations are what have made us thrive as an organization. And in this moment of twin crises with public health and also racial reckoning, we are going to do that even more. Next slide. In order to remain independent, there are financial challenges that we're facing, and there are things that we would need to do as an institution and as a community to allow that to happen. So I want to share with you all what some of the considerations are in order for that to happen. We need to maintain a balanced budget. We are not at that state now, so I want to be very clear about that and what it means for an organization like ours to remain affordable is that we have to find a way to be able to do that. That means that we aren't losing money, to be quite frank. When we sell the building that you see behind me, I'm superimposed here, 41 Berkeley Street, there are proceeds that will be from that sale, and the proposal to stay in community would take the proceeds from that proposal and invest as much of them as possible in an endowment for the college that would produce more money for scholarships and also allow us to maintain a building. I want to make it clear at the outset, and should have done that much earlier, that the board of trustees, that's the fiduciary agent for the college, and has the responsibility of stewarding the mission and also stewarding finances of the college, has not made a decision about the strategic direction in which the college will go. So there has not been a decision to merge with another institution or to remain an autonomous institution. And so that's the choice before us, which is why it's really important to be able to have the feedback of community about the impact of various choices. So you'll see here that being able to preserve as much of the assets as possible is a paramount consideration no matter which direction we choose. Next slide. There's a timeline that would take us into the presence in Nubian Square, and that timeline is a 2-year timeline. I won't go through all of the details here, but just wanted to share with those in the audience that there is a process that we would need to go through to refine the college and the model of the college, and wanted to make that very clear to folks that this is where we are, and we're happy to have the opportunity for continued dialogue with community. And from there, I will pass things over to Vice Chair of our board, Ron Dorsey. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. I just want to make a brief closing statement to the presentation. For all of the reasons that Dr. Francis described, Benjamin Franklin is a special and in fact sacred place for the college's board. And it's why we're working tirelessly to identify the best ways to fulfill our commitment as a designated minority serving institution and to maintain an approach to instruction and training that has not only yielded incredible results for our students, but that we think is the future of how learning will take place in colleges and universities. As we chart a course to the future, the board's responsibility is to uphold the mission, support leadership and faculty in the execution of the mission, and maintain the college's financial health, ensuring its long-term viability. Given the challenges that we and many colleges face due to the impact of COVID, and given unstable enrollment across colleges and universities nationwide over the last decade, the Benjamin Franklin Board is working harder than ever to uphold these responsibilities. Our greatest ambition is in line with what Dr. Francis just presented, and it's to remain independent and to move our operations to Nubian Square, where we can partner with organizations in and beyond the neighborhood to deliver a student experience to which few colleges, we think, will be able to compare. We chose Nubian Square as a future location a couple of years ago very purposefully because we, like many community members, consider it Boston's education innovation district, and we wanted to be at the center of that work. We spent a good portion of the year exploring a number of options to meet this ambition, including thinking very creatively about uses of space to minimize our costs, and partnering with other schools, companies, and associations to create and deliver affordable, high quality programming. We're also exploring contingency and alternative plans in case we can't fully achieve this ambition, keeping in mind that we first and foremost want to ensure that our students, who are largely students of color, can receive an affordable post-secondary education and direct paths to career opportunities. These alternative plans have included looking at what it would mean for Ben Franklin to merge with another school. For us, though, the conditions for merger are a high bar that would require any partner to help us create mechanisms to maintain affordability for students and that allow us freedom to keep pursuing our mission in some form under the Benjamin Franklin banner. To reiterate what Dr. Francis has said, we have not arrived at any decisions about the path forward and are still learning about the options and opportunities at our disposal. Tonight's conversation and others to come are critical opportunities for us to learn and to get community guidance on the desired future for the Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. So we look forward to this conversation.
You may retire the slides. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if you wanted to offer some more words, or if that was it, I want to kind of just jump in. I think that was very helpful in setting the stage. Are you good, Dr. Francis?
I'm good. I think after we have a few questions, it might be good, Marvin, for you to come on. There's another overview that explains what our program mix is, but let's dive into the questions.
Okay, and I'm going to just open up with one that I hope will set the stage, and then we're just going to alternate between the senator and I as moderators. So we put it out there with registration. We've got all these questions in, and we're just going to have this dialogue. But I think the presentation was extremely helpful. What I gathered from it is what I knew and appreciated about your work, which is that you are largely serving men of color in our city. You know, my nephew went to Ben Franklin Institute when he graduated high school. It is a very good option for many students coming out, whether they're coming out of high school. And I'm really excited about that. I was very excited about you guys coming into Nubian Square. And when news began to break about a merger, and I understand the need for a merger, we see many smaller institutions here locally, but across the country, you know, needing to merge with larger institutions. Most recently, we saw Wheelock merge with Boston University. We have seen smaller universities that didn't act quickly enough and that took students' money and then later closed, and there's been a lot of drama around that. So I certainly appreciate that the institution is looking at ways to ensure its viability and sustainability into the future, particularly given your mission and who you're serving. But when news broke about this potential merger, and I have deep and great respect for Wentworth and have a relationship with Wentworth as well, but that news broke of a merger, questions arose around what does that mean given your unique mission and who you serve, being men of color, but also what does that mean for the square? Because if you merge and don't come into the square, like you had originally thought you would be moving into the square, then what does that mean in terms of a parcel of land that has been blighted for a number of years, in a square that already has more than its fair share of blight, in a square where there is you know, lots of businesses and residents and community leaders who are deeply invested in this square and its vitality. And I heard you mention, Mr. Dorsey, wanting to be in this education district in the heart of it all. But as you know, from your experience, at the school department, the square is in transition. And so if this doesn't happen and that parcel remains blighted for more years down the road, so one thing that was exciting, it's BFIT, they serve Black and brown men. Then here's an opportunity to develop a parcel which would create not just temporary jobs, construction jobs that are much needed in our community, but also, whatever was on the ground floor in terms of cafes and amenities to serve the institution, there'd be those permanent jobs there. And so I want to just really set the stage. What does your thinking now, now that you've had some time, this is now somewhat been out there in the press, but not in a way where you can really share your thinking, what's at stake for the institution, and also what it means for the broader community, what it means for the square. So it's not just for your educational mission and serving Black and brown, men of color, but also what it means for the larger community. Why don't we just start there? And I would open that up to anyone on the panel, anyone on the team from Ben Franklin Institute to respond to that.
Certainly. So I'll make an opening statement and then we'll ask our board members to weigh in. So we, a year ago, actually almost a year ago, September 30th, announced with great fanfare that we had purchased a property at 1011 Harrison Avenue and were moving to Roxbury. That was and is still our intention. And we also know that in that 12 months, really almost 13 months, the world changed in many ways. We are in a different position financially. We are in a different place from a social perspective as well. And I think it is that tension between the two that we're grappling with. So we certainly think that it absolutely meets the moment for us to double down on a mission that is articulated in a way that invests in a community that's the heart of the community of color in Boston, and which is what prompted us to choose the property in the first place. Where we are now is at a place where we need co-investment from other entities that also claim to care about this mission so that we could live out our values in a way that is affordable for the students we serve and doesn't break our bank. So that, I mean, it's as simple and as complex as that. And, I think I will leave it there to say we would like to get there. And the truth is we are going to need more resources in order to make that possible, in order to continue operations in a way that's fiscally responsible.
Madam President, I will only add to that the economic development opportunity and really the economic development imperatives associated with what we proposed in moving to Nubian Square are not lost on us by any stretch of the imagination. I think we both saw what we could contribute to and what we could gain by being in Nubian Square. So we realize that there is a great deal at stake here in thinking about this. As the board is pursuing options, I guarantee you that one of the primary questions is always, where does Nubian fit in to the option? Whether that has been independence, some form of partnership short of merger, some form of partnership that looks more like merger. We've acquired a property that we actually covet at this point. We imagine ourselves there in many ways, and so I think we are still trying to figure out how can we deliver on at least a set of early intentions that the acquisition of that property has communicated.
I would just weigh in on the financial side as treasurer. So the college had been losing money for several years. And part of the for many, many years. But the sale of the building was a strategic effort to develop a bigger endowment to let us move toward financial sustainability. Our basic revenue is from tuition, and our student body largely is Pell Grant students. And then the other source of revenue that we have to date has been fundraising. And we have been raising $3 million a year roughly recently. I think we're on track to raise 3.3 million. However, that's not yet with Angela's excellent work, but that is not enough. We unexpectedly lost almost 4 million last year, and that was without the student enrollment hit that we've now taken this year. With COVID has hit us in several ways. One is just the reduced number of students, like all higher education institutions. And second, we have some hands-on lab classes, and they're limited as to the number of people that can be in those classes. So we actually have wait lists for some of our popular programs because of that, which also reduces students. So from a financial sustainability side, we really need to, we have been trying to figure out how do we get more fundraising in and how do we get more students? Because at our cost level, we could serve a great number of students without significantly changing our cost level. So figuring out how we get many of those students who we accept who don't come to boost the student enrollment has been something we've been tackling in a lot of ways over the years. And once students get here, the staff is really good about trying to retain them. We have a very high retention relative to other institutions who serve our student population, but we really need a volume of students to boost the tuition. And as you know, we now have this sort of notation. We have accreditors and higher state and federal education departments looking at us because they're looking at the whole landscape of higher education institutions, and they're concerned about those institutions that suddenly abruptly go away. And we're working really hard to not be that institution, to be the institution that preserves our mission for a very, very long time into the future. But that's why we have to look at, how do we get more money and what are our options in order to be able to deliver the same thing that we're delivering that we think is super important. So it's sort of students first and institutional structure a very close second.
Does anyone else want to weigh in? I want to be able to turn it over to my colleague and sister in service, Senator Sonia, to ask another question. And you, unless you have even a follow-up to this question, Senator.
I would love to move on to another question unless
Sure.
more
Nope.
folks want to comment on this one. Thank you, Madam President. So I'm just going to be blunt with this question. I hear BFIT leaders stressing that no decision has been made yet on whether to pursue a merger, which I'm glad to hear. I think it was a shock to many in the community to sort of find out that discussion of this was underway. I think it's helpful for us to sort of be plain, unless, correct me if this is wrong, but I think, my perception, and I suspect other people's perception, is that the discussions have been not just about merge or not to merge, but specifically about a merger with Wentworth. So, and this is where I'll be blunt, I, like President Janey, have a, separate relationship over my years in representing this district with Wentworth. I have great respect for what they do, but their mission is not BFIT's mission. Their student profile is not BFIT's profile, and their leadership is not BFIT's leadership. And just as a example of this that jumped out to me as I've been sort of poking around recently. This past summer, BFIT made a very explicit sort of values forward statement about diversity, equity, and inclusion and racial justice. I don't know if it exists for Wentworth, and I just haven't found it yet, but I don't see that sort of headlined on their website. And these are, just that, plus the fact that it is an identified minority serving institution. It is one of the only Black-led institutions of higher education I think we have in the state. This is a really important asset for us to preserve as a community. And so I think my boiled down question for the board members is, and also for you, Dr. Francis, is do you believe that every avenue to preserve BFIT as an independent institution and thereby protecting that mission and the character of the organization has been exhausted? Because, you know, if it has been, right, and sometimes we do have to talk about mergers, right, be realistic in order to avert a worse outcome. But if we haven't exhausted all of those avenues and opportunities, then my sort of secondary question is, why aren't we exhausting all of those opportunities?
So, Senator, thank you for the question. And, you know, I would welcome Claire and others to chime in, but I'm going to give you the plainest answer possible. And I think that answer is no. All possibilities have not been exhausted yet, but we are very much in the process of turning over every rock and stone in the Boston area to seek partnerships, to seek additional funding. Right now, ours is really an acute short-term funding challenge to get us to the proceeds from the sale of our building in the South End. You know, the magnitude of that is needing to raise about $5 million by the close of this year, and probably an additional 10 over the course of the first half of 2021 to get us to the sale. So, you know, not insurmountable in a place of Boston's wealth, but at the same time, a heavy lift nonetheless. What can complement the need for that raise, though, is also figuring out what are the partnerships that defray cost for us. So, you know, I would put into perspective the conversations that have been had with Wentworth as a number of the avenues that we have been exploring, but there are many more that we are looking at that would create very unique and innovative partnerships, but also that would buoy us for independence, short-term and long-term as well. And you know, almost on a daily basis, I'm with Dr. Francis in 2 or 3 meetings, you know, talking to a who's who and sometimes a whom we don't know in Boston to really figure out what the possibilities are for the institution.
And so I would say that this is really a moment for, to my mind, for the city of Boston, for the greater Boston area to step up and really help us meet the moment. We are an institution that's been chronically under supported for the type of mission that we live out. You know, it is not surprising because of systemic inequities in our society that if you take a look at institutions that are troubled of any size, they are mostly institutions that serve low-income students or that serve first-gen students or serve students of color. That is a problem. You know, Pine Manor, Mount Ida, Newberry, Wheelock were all institutions that served a much greater proportion of students of color than the places that they were subsumed by. And I'm a product of a HBCU. I know that students of color have greater outcomes when they are surrounded by supportive environments where they are not minoritized. I have lived that out, and we want to maintain our independence. I think it's a matter of meeting vision with what opportunities there are in a short time frame. We are in a pressure cooker environment of needing resources in a short amount of time. And I think in certain circumstances, that is what is generating the stress for our institution. And I'd like to call on Angela, if you could just give a bit of a sense, right, of I would say the fundraising funnel, right? If it's not what we raise already, it's where we need to go in order to reach a steady state. And that might help to contextualize some of the challenge that's here as well.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that. So the reality is that when you look at an institution like Benjamin Franklin, there are a lot of people that would say, you've been around for 113 years. What does your endowment look like? What does your fundraising look like? What exactly have you been doing to raise funds on a regular basis? But Benjamin Franklin's development office, compared with other institutions that have been around as long as ours, is very nascent. The development office has only been in existence as an office for about 10 to 12 years. I am the sixth person to lead that team in that time frame to give you a sense of turnaround, turnover, and transition. We have been very heavily reliant on foundations, philanthropic support, and have not seen the kind of support from big business, from corporations, and from individuals that definitely, to a great extent, benefit from the work that Benjamin Franklin is doing by the students that we produce and put out into community. And also do not necessarily see the kind of, as yet, and we hope to grow this, but do not see the kind of annual support and contribution that some institutions see from their alumni, community base, et cetera. So that's a challenge for us, and not one that I think is insurmountable. Most definitely, we recognize that we offer something, and there are numerous industry partners that work with us to help hire our students and provide internships for our students, but they aren't giving money to our institution as well. And so in other places that I've worked in, I've been working in fundraising and philanthropy for close to 30 years now. I've seen that those institutions are both stepping up in terms of their offerings for reaching out for employees, but they're also stepping up and encouraging their leaders, their employees, and others to be supporting this institution as well philanthropically. And we lack that. So we're definitely trying to work on and trying to build on that. As Ron and Aisha have highlighted, currently the development office going forward is responsible for about 20 to 25% of our annual revenue. We have a goal to raise 3.2 million this coming year, and we need 5 million on top of that. And so that would be a record-setting year for us, and given what we have been able to accomplish in the past. But again, I do think that if we can see the kind of support that people who want this institution to remain independent need to provide and step up and do, then we can do that. So we just really need people to recognize that an institution like this doesn't just operate on wishes and prayers and good thoughts. We need people to step forward. Sorry, I'm a fundraiser. We need people to step forward with some checks and some cash. Just gonna say that.
Dr. Francis, can I just add to what Angela said, that when I was outlining the finances before, we've kept tuition flat and we subsidized tuition, and even with the fundraising we've done, we're still running a deficit. So we need to have additional funding, additional sources so that we can keep the tuition low for students, because we understand our students cannot afford any more than we're charging.
Actually, that's, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Madam President, just to add one other quick comment. It's also while we're looking at approaches to changing the business model. There are, and I'm sure, Madam President, you'll be familiar with this language, that there is a structural deficit baked into the business model. You know, while not approaching the kind of structural deficit you and I normally talk about, it's still significant for our college. And so I think we have to think about, how do we do business differently in a way that finds us producing the margin that we need to provide students with more resources. And it's why we are investigating this communiversity concept, because we think that through partnership, strategic alliances, there is a way to defray costs and create more value and increase tuition and fundraising in the process.
Great. And I think what your comments as well as yours, Claire, are a good segue, just following up on the question from Senator Chang Diaz around, you know, her question around how we preserve the mission and who you serve. You know, I really want to hear your thoughts, you know, beyond, I know you need people to step up and you've got to do the fundraising, but how do we, if we care about preserving the mission of the institution and the fact that you're serving mostly men of color, how do we also make sure that the institution remains affordable? So if you merged with Wentworth, or if you don't merge, like, how do we ensure that this institution continues to serve men of color and does more to serve women of color?
So that plan really rests in three areas. So we know that companies are placing a premium on tech talent. We need to shift the assumption that industry can wait until the end of the line, can wait at the end of the line for graduates to be produced and pluck people up for free. That's free, right? They're not investing in the production of those folks. And in many ways, in many cases, really, aside from their recruiters, it's not like they're paying to help us produce that talent. So we are making a case that we need that investment up front. So we accept about 1,000 students a year. So we know the pool is there. The delta between what people understand that it will take for them to pay out of pocket or through loans and what we're able to provide via either Pell Grants if they're eligible or scholarship is about $5,000 a year. Making that announcement, making that plain to a company to say you want more, software developers of color, we could get them. I bet you some of those 1,000 students would be terrific, prospective students would be terrific software developers. They are not going to say yes if they can't see the financial model. That $5,000 might as well be $5 million for them. So we are telling that story in plainer language. And
I love this, Dr. Francis. I think, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just this week held a city council hearing on student debt and how that is crushing, particularly to communities of color, have an actual ordinance on credit checks and how debt can impact someone's ability to find employment. So I think there is a real role for private industry who claim they are looking for diverse talent to put their money where their mouth is. Certainly, Angela, Dr. Francis, the city can do more and should do more. And I want to figure out, as the president of the council and as a District 7 counselor, how I can make sure that we are making good on our investment with BFIT. So I will help you any way to figure out what the city can do, but the city can't do everything.
That's right. That's right.
Private industry is where all of this money is. And we know who runs private industry. We know who's at the top there. We know that folks are giving a lot of lip service to wanting diversity. Here's a perfect opportunity for people to put their money where their mouth is and invest on the front end. Is this what you mean when you talk about changing the business model? Is this what?
That's what I mean. So what we want to be is a place where as soon as you apply, we get a profile of you. We already do this. We survey our students. We know if they're working, if they're not, what help they need. We want to be able to look at that profile and say, oh, you need a job. You need a job that is 10 hours a week. You want to go into healthcare information technology. We're going to help you get a job that is related to healthcare information technology. So that's what we want to be able to do. We know that this is possible. We have actually gone around and looked at some other independent technical colleges that are doing this. And those are places in cities where, to your point, the community has gathered around and said, nope, this resource is important. This resource drives talent. This resource is what we need in order for our businesses to grow. So we're going to help make that happen. So that's what I mean by that model. So that if we could get people knowing in advance, when you come to BFIT, you're going to have the financial resources you need to make if it's a certificate program or an associate's degree or a 4-year degree, you will make it through those programs and you won't have to pay an inordinate amount of money, nor will you be saddled with a bunch of debt. So yes, that's exactly what I mean.
I have a clarifying question before I turn it over to the senator. Should I be saying BFIT? I've been saying BFIT or Ben Franklin Institute.
This is a perennial. So listen, Madam President, I will tell you, there are folks who, Benjamin Franklin is a huge brand. And so I want us to be saying Benjamin Franklin more. And BFIT, I know that's the colloquial term and the young folks and the students call us that, but it also sounds like a gym. So I want people to know.
Names are important. That's why I asked for the clarification.
Thank you. I appreciate
very important.
That we are Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. That name, the inventor, that he was. We need to be as inventive as he was right now. We need to be that inventive with what we're about to do and what we can do. So thank you for asking.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you for correcting me. I might shorten to Ben Franklin just for practicality, but Just a procedural question. Are we, I could keep asking my questions all night long. Are we shifting over to community submitted questions, or do we have?
Yes. Yep, we have there. You should have questions from your team, so that, and they've come in from the registration, they've come in from all different folks. So there should be a list of questions that you're asking. Sometimes you'll see right then the community leader or resident who's asked the question right there in the question. So I believe we're at question 4, or if you wanted to skip to another question, that's fine.
No, I got it. Question 4. Here we go.
All righty.
Asks, what will happen to the Harrison Ave property? Now, I'm not clear. I don't know. I'm not sure if Mr. Lloyd meant if a merger ensues. I'm going to guess that was the intent behind the question.
I think so. And since we haven't gotten to that point, I think short of saying we don't know, which is not a satisfying answer, the reality is that we would like to retain the property and would like to have some sort of presence. So if we merge, so remember we talked about, or Ron described the fact that there's a high bar of asks, if you will, of a merger partner. One of them is to develop some sort of outpost of Benjamin Franklin Institute on that property, even if we did merge. So that would be our best outcome. It is also true that we haven't gotten to that level of detailed conversation with any partner.
I think I will just also add to that we have really been trying to get creative about the use of the space and asking a lot of questions about how we can both affordably build something on the site that is state of the art, appropriate size, while also creating the kind of reserve and endowment for ourselves that goes directly towards student success. And so we've talked about buildings of various sizes where programs would be housed, but part of the reason that we're starting to get, somewhat enamored with this more networked model is that we can take great advantage of assets that are already in the square while adding to them by bringing some state-of-the-art facilities, but it's no need to be duplicative, honestly. Take, for example, our automotive program. Within a radius of us, you've got Madison Park's automotive plant, you've got Wentworth's automotive classroom, you've got facilities opening up in New Market. Part of our question is, do we need to build a new automotive facility, or do we need to partner with folks where we can enhance their facilities for the future, and we can effectively joint venture on something that benefits a whole lot more people?
I have a question here from Kay Matthew, who asks, what will the environmental impact be in regards to new construction to accommodate expansion at the Wentworth site? And then also by Kay, there are some sub-questions here. What are the numbers with regards to total student enrollees at both schools, and where will they live? And then what benefits will this merger have on both, she says BFIT, but I'll say Ben Franklin, students? That's from Kay Matthew.
Oh, thank you, Kay, for the question. I want to reiterate that we haven't decided on a merger. I'm not sure of the Wentworth aspects of those the questions, but if we build at 1011 Harrison Avenue, we will certainly, and have already actually had conversations about how to make sure that it is a demonstration project in terms of sustainability and construction. We do have programs in the trades and would like to make sure that we are demonstrating, all of the best and most cutting edge aspects that we can afford of green and clean building. In terms of student body, we have about 460 students right now. And I think there were several parts to that question. I'm hoping that I hit all of them.
She said, I can just quickly reiterate, she also asked about where students would live.
Oh, yes.
And then she asked about how this would benefit your current student population. A merger would benefit your current student population at
So we're a commuter campus. I would imagine that if students wanted to live on a campus and we merged with a place that had dorms, that they would be able to live in those dorms should they be able to afford it. You know, that's extra dollars, which is frankly why we don't have dorms at Benjamin Franklin currently. So I think that living arrangements would be to be determined for people who wanted to live on campus.
If I can just add one more note, maybe stretching the question that Kay asked about environmental sustainability to maybe saying that we're trying to achieve ecological sustainability. And what I mean by that, it's the environmental impact as well as the human relations impact and the economic impact of what we're doing. And so if we think about it in that frame, we've also got to do this in a way that honors Boston's jobs residency policy as well. And that meets the mandates around racial and gender inclusion.
And you know that's a question, so that
Yes.
is definitely going to come up here.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that. I'll turn it over to Senator for the next question. Senator, I'm sorry, Senator, you're on mute.
Sorry, happened at least once a Zoom.
Exactly.
The next question submitted was, given the original transition plan to sell Benjamin Franklin's property at 41 East Berkeley Street, and I'm going to editorialize in here, and also the City of Boston's gift of the land at 41 East Berkeley Street, where would the proceeds from that sale go in the event of a merger?
Claire, do you want to take that?
Sure. So as we've discussed, we've had partial conversations with Wentworth. So the discussions to date have been about that funding and endowment that would ensure that the students that are in the Benjamin Franklin College are able to access education at the same rate as they do now, and that they're able to access education. And there would be strings around that money if certain things don't happen that prevent it to be used for anything else. And Wentworth was asked to add some additional funds to that endowment.
So I'm going to just add, ask some clarifying question here. The proceeds from that sale are ballpark how much?
50 something. So to get where we have today, we've borrowed. So we have debt we need to repay. So we have borrowed from our own endowment, which we must repay. So there's a set of dollars that is maybe 15 that will need to be repaid. So probably around 42 million after that.
So that 42 million, I mean, that will be more than enough to support the current Benjamin Franklin student cohort were they to transfer over to Wentworth. So then what, of the remaining money,
well,
what kind of string? And again, I understand, there's not actually a merger agreement yet, but
yeah.
I hope that the board is, prior to a merger agreement, sort of grappling with what are the conditions that they would require of a merger partner for the sort of designated use of that money to continue the mission. So how does that work with the remaining, I don't know.
And Angela can chime in and help me here on the how the endowments typically work to be sustaining.
Endowed funds, you are only allowed to draw down a certain percentage each year. So they would be limited to drawing down anywhere from, it depends on the institution, anywhere from 3 to 4%, 3 to 5% a year. So, and that would then produce a certain amount. So the 42 million, though it seems like, yes, that's a lot, and there's a lot left over. And what do you do with that? If it's set up in an endowment that is specifically designated to help provide scholarships for Benjamin Franklin students, or whatever purpose it's set up for, you aren't touching the principal for the most part. You're drawing down each year, and that, and it again, I will preface this by saying it's all dependent upon how you set up the endowment. You could set up an endowment that is specifically designed to expire, within a certain period of time, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. But most cases in most institutions, when they establish these endowed funds, they are intended to draw down each year no more than 5%. In most cases, I think I've seen them as much as 6%. And the remainder is there to sort of continue to ebb and flow with market and other things, et cetera, to continue to provide those resources. And that's the same thing that our board has talked about in terms of what I refer to as PRISM funds, which are the preserving of maintenance of buildings and other things, et cetera. So a lot of institutions have endowments that are specifically for taking care of your building. Your air conditioner goes out, you can tap into the funds that you're able to draw down from your endowment for those purposes and other things. So
is it the commitment of the board to require of a merger partner, should you go that direction, that the endowment funds would remain in a segregated endowment fund that, you know, doesn't just sort of get scooped into in the case of Wentworth, you know, Wentworth's pre-existing endowment, which I assume they have.
they do.
Because
Yes, that's been the discussion, that these funds are for this purpose. And our goal, should we pursue merger, is to make sure that this type of students that we educate can continue to be educated with the same approach and the same programs, changing as careers change, over in an affordable manner for the long term.
In a way that doesn't just replace what the sort of receiving institution is already doing, right? Like some percentage of Wentworth's student body is men of color, you know, first generation college goers, right? So I would want to make sure that any institution that was receiving this endowment is not sort of backfilling the work that they're already doing with these endowment funds, and that it would be a sort of, you know, a no net loss of total service to the community.
Right. Well, I don't know about their DEI plan. They do have on their website an announced inclusive excellence plan, where they are focused on adding people of color in their programs in general. So they have been funding that from their endowment, but yes, this would significantly expand those students and ensure that the students that we serve are able to attend. Continue to be served with these same programs. Our understanding is there, you know, where our interests intersect is about the ability for us to continue to provide the same target population with the same relative level and the same approach, high touch student success approach to teaching, and the same types of programs.
It might be helpful here to get Marvin in, because he's our Dean of Academic Affairs, and there's a slide that demonstrates what our programs are. Because I just want to make sure that people have an opportunity to see what it is.
You want us to bring that slide in?
Could you please?
Do we have the number? Which slide is it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Go to the next page of this, page 2. Okay, Marvin.
So these are the different programs that we offer at Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. And so what makes us very unique and sets us apart from some of the programs that Wentworth Institute of Technology offers is that the programs that we offer are hands-on. They're more towards the technology side, where the students are actually putting the creation of an engineer into place. So automotive technology is one of the oldest programs in the United States, where, you know, we have a long history of providing quality training in the certificate, associate, and a bachelor degree for the automotive industry. We also have programs in computer and information technology, which recently we just added some new certificate programs in networking, web design, and software development that is stackable to our associate degree in computer and information technology. So students can start in the certificate program, and then they could either decide to pursue a career with industry certifications, or they can continue to get their associate degree. So students will graduate in 2 years with a certificate and an associate degree, which allows them to be a little bit more marketable. Something that Wentworth isn't doing. Wentworth also has a computer science program that focuses on that. So Ours is a little bit different in that end. So when we talk about the type of stackable programs, we're talking about certificate programs that lead into associate degrees. So that is one example of that. We also have a health information technology program, which is offered as an associate degree and a bachelor's degree, where students can work as in the hospitals as a information technician, where they're providing security for patient and client records. And so they're making sure that all those data is secured. So those are some of the things that we do in the computer and information technology area. We also offer some trade programs in HVAC, practical electricity. HVAC, if you don't know what that means, it's heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration. And so that's a career where there's such a demand. We offer it as a certificate program at Benjamin Franklin, and practical electricity is also a certificate program. There's a strong need for that. And we prepare students to go and get jobs, and they're hired very quickly, and they have a high job placement rate in those areas. We recently restructured our engineering technology programs, where we added certificate programs in CNC machining, CAD with SolidWorks, electronics technology, and we're in the process of looking at developing an associate degree of engineering technology where those certificate programs can feed into the engineering technology associate degree program. So we're looking at that, we're restructuring that. And the reason is because we pay attention to what the industry is telling us. And so the industry says that this is what we're looking at now. So with advanced manufacturing and CNC machining, a lot of people are talking about the automation side of it. And so what we're looking to do is merge our electronics engineering technology program and mechanical engineering technology program into an engineering technology program that will allow students to have the access to CNC machining and automation. And so those are some of the things that we're working on with the Industry Advisory Board, putting that together right now. And those are some of the things that I'm working on, my team is working on. And I also forgot to mention that our CNC electronics and our CAD with SolidWorks all have industry certifications that students can be certified once they complete the program and sit for the certification exam and get the industry certification. So those are all important for our students to be marketable in the industry. Opticianry is a associate degree program that we offer at Benjamin Franklin, which is very unique because a lot of people don't know what it is. But what it is focusing on eye health technology. So to be an optician, to basically focus on vision care. And so what we're trying to do, there's such a demand for that. We have a lot of connections with the industry who is dying for to get our students. Poor choice of words, so I apologize for that. But there's definitely a demand for students, our graduates, to go into that industry. So we're very successful there. We recently just became ABET accredited for our electrical engineering program, which is our only four-year bachelor degree program where it focuses on power engineering. And so we specialize in that area where students can get a job in that area, and especially in Eastern Massachusetts, where there's such a demand for that. The students are employable, and we're very excited to have that be approved by ABET accreditation. So we're really excited about our programs, and I think one of the things that we're trying to do is to make sure that we have a pipeline with the Boston Public Schools, allowing students who are in the career and technical education to build a pipeline for those students. And so in this graph here, you could see that students who are in the career and technical education programs through Boston Public Schools can get some credits towards their associate degree at Benjamin Franklin. And so that relationship that we have with the Boston Public Schools allows the students to complete their programs a little bit faster. And so I recently joined and became a member of the advisory council for the statewide career and technical education. So more to come on that with my involvement. And so, you know, as we continue to build partnerships with Boston Public Schools and other schools in the surrounding Eastern Massachusetts area, we'll find that there's going to be opportunities for students to gain access to careers in the trades and STEM fields. So happy to answer any questions as regards to that, and looking forward to.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marvin. At this time, I did have the next question from the community on the list, but I want to defer. I know that Senator Chang Diaz will have to step off. So I wanted to allow her an opportunity to ask another question and to offer some closing thoughts and maybe some suggestions for next steps. And then I'll go back and take on the rest of the questions. And I want to thank you again, Senator, for being with us and for being a partner in this work.
My pleasure. And thanks for letting me jump in here. I'm sorry, I have the 7 o'clock commitment. I can't fudge more than a couple minutes on. So I'll ask the last community submitted question that I have, but then before you jump into answering, just make one final comment of my own. So the question was, what assurance can the board give that there will be an accountability process in place to keep the community better informed about their thinking and decisions going forward? So hold that question in your mind. Last thing, I mean, I'm really glad someone submitted that question. It is also a question that I have. But aside from that question, I just want to pick up on the thread earlier when Angela was taking us through the fundraising funnel, if you will, that this, I mean, to me, it is a scandal that the tech heavy industry that we have in Boston and Greater Boston is not yet the kind of philanthropic, and not just philanthropic, because it's not purely altruistic, right? It's feeding their talent pipeline. That they are not more of an active funding partner as an industry, particularly at a day and age when we have so many tech companies that are making statements about the need to diversify tech. I can't think of a better pipeline for them to accomplish that goal than keeping Benjamin Franklin strong and independent and deeply grounded and centered on this mission. So Boston is, I think about the waterfront is awash in money. And so I just want to make a strong urging to the board to make big asks, make ambitious asks there to help patch through this acute time problem that you have until you get to the proceeds of the sale. And if there are things that I, or if I may be so bold as to say, my colleagues in government can do to help you sort of make the case in any of those conversations with those tech leaders, I'd be happy to participate in that. So I'll leave it there, and thank you again so much for this forum, and I'm sorry I got to duck out.
Thank you for being here.
Could you just repeat the question one more time?
Yes.
You can leave us with the question.
Yes. What assurance can the board give that there will be an accountability process in place to keep the community better informed about their thinking and decisions going forward? And I'll just again add in here a little that if you can let us know anything about what you expect the timeline to be for the board's decision making about merger or no merger. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to take the accountability piece, Aisha, and I will talk about decision making?
Sure. So we do consider ourselves a community-based organization. We are having a forum next week that is specifically addressed for students, parents, alumni, and community-based organizations that are youth serving. I think what what happened in this situation was essentially, news got out ahead of us before we were at a place in conversations that it was more typical to talk about things. We were still guided and still are by a non-disclosure agreement. And, that's unfortunate. Yeah, you never want to be in a position where your stakeholders and community members are caught unaware and caught off guard. And so we apologize that happened in the way that it did. It was also something that, wasn't in our control and that we did not intend. I think going forward, I would actually like to ask of our public officials, what is a level of engagement that that feels appropriate, right? So we're running a college in the midst of a pandemic and in the midst of all of these things. So and just like all other people have a lot of demands on their time. So we have, I think one of the things we've thought about is we have a website that we could use to make more active updates. We haven't actually updated the website section that talks about our move in a year. So I want to acknowledge that. And I think that is something that we can certainly do going forward. But, part of the reason why it's our great benefit to do this type of forum is that we can hear about what an appropriate level of give and take and conversation is, whether that's routing information through elected officials that are invested in our future for you all to send to your newsletters, or whether that's periodic opportunities to speak to the public in various types of virtual forums until such a time as we get past the pandemic and can meet again in person. So that's what I would offer, that we do consider ourselves to be to have a level of responsibility to keep the public and our constituents certainly informed, and plan to do a better job of that going forward.
Madam President, a few things about decision-making and some of the
I was
thresholds.
on mute. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was on mute anyway. Go ahead.
Okay. Decision-making and some of the thresholds that we need to meet in the immediate future. We, for ourselves and for community benefit, need to have concrete next steps by the end of this year. Simultaneously, what has to happen is we have to have a line of sight on the short-term resources that we need. Where those two things dovetail really do create a set of imperatives for us going into January 2021 and decision-making that needs to be had. We want to alleviate as much pressure as possible leading into 2021 and to free ourselves to pursue the vision, under our own auspices and authority. But we need to make sure that we hit those marks, and we will communicate as we near the end of the year, both what we've learned, what the possibilities seem to be as we're forecasting against the resources that are showing up or not showing up, and then what the likely actions that will be taken. But the steps will certainly go into the first of the year.
Yes, and I know that we've been talking about a timeline, and I think it would be really important for folks to understand and let me start by saying, Dr. Francis, I really appreciate you acknowledging that the information was not rolled out and was not made known in a way in which you would have wanted, and for acknowledging that there are some constraints on what you can say and not say based on the non-disclosure, but the importance of communicating with stakeholders and constituents in a much better way. So I really appreciate you acknowledging that. I think there are opportunities moving forward to do a much better job at communicating. And certainly I am happy to use my platform in any way to try to get information out, which is why, again, I appreciate that immediately when this was known, we were able to have some conversation and then quickly move forward to kind of have this discussion, because I think it is important. I would suggest all of the above, certainly utilizing your website, certainly, obviously, your student body, making sure that your current students understand what's at stake. The other thing that I think is really helpful, and we've been talking about it here, is talking about the exact benchmarks that you need to make in terms of your fundraising by what date. We need X amount by this date to do blah, blah, blah. If we don't get X amount by this date, it means ABC. So I think it would be helpful. I heard you, Mr. Dorsey, talking about dates and what would happen by the end of the year. I think what would also be helpful is understanding, we talked about a 3 million and then needing a 5 million on top of that. If, you know, when within this timeline do you need to hit these particular benchmarks? And then another question, since we're talking about accountability and engagement and how to do a much better job of respecting the student body and the community overall, how do we then engage the community in this? I think people very much appreciate the work that you do, the mission, et cetera. How do we engage them in the fight for fundraising? How do we, you know, get folks activated, not just your students and your alum, but students, stakeholders in the community? Why don't I go to another question, because I want to be mindful of the time. It's after 7. Yes.
If I could just add, for the community to send us students is another way that they can help us with fundraising and financial solvency.
Thank you. So this question, and very much related to the engagement question, is from Siddiqui Cambone, and he wrote, many individuals of the Nubian Square Coalition want to know whether BFIT the Ben Franklin Institute of Technology administrative reps would be willing to meet with coalition members to discuss with the community on a regular basis as this merger continues. That's the question. So there's an ask by a particular leader around the Nubian Square Coalition, whether BFIT would meet with this coalition.
So yes, I'd be willing to meet with the coalition.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to move through some other questions because now I also have the questions that Senator Chang Diaz may have had too. And I'll try to make sure that I'm not repeating. This one, this question, and I mentioned earlier that we would get to a question around jobs. I heard you mention the Boston residency jobs policy. And so this question is, what goals are being set to hire staff of color, recruit students of color in communities of color? How will you achieve that? And then on the site, assuming that you come to Harrison, how will you ensure that the development of the site will also benefit the community in terms of those jobs?
Well, as a new commissioner on the Boston Employment Commission, there's absolutely no way that we wouldn't at least meet and if not exceed the Boston residency job policy. So that's something that we committed to already. And, you know, even though we don't have a ton of details about, you know, we had not gotten that far in terms of the development planning, but we absolutely are committed to meeting those goals. And then if the staffing question is about our faculty and staff presently, I would say we do.
Students and board, and you answered the one on the students, I think.
Students and board, okay. So our board.
And staff.
Yep. Our board has become more reflective of the community over the past year and a half. I think that well, there's board members who are here, so I won't speak on behalf of the board, but I will just say that the board has become more reflective of the community. We recently, the board elected its first board member who's actually from Roxbury and lives in Roxbury, which is huge. And on the staff and faculty side of things, we have a very diverse staff. I'm not able to quote exactly, you know, what the stats are in the same way that I did for students. Where we do need to make improvement, and we actually, Marvin might speak to this, is on, and we have made strides in this area, is in the faculty aspect of things. And so Marvin, I'll let you speak for yourself in terms of what you're doing to diversify our faculty.
Sir, I'm sorry, you're still muted.
So yes, we're definitely looking to increase diverse faculty. We have recently selected one of our department chair directors who is in charge of our electrical engineer, who's a person of color. We hired, additional staff, adjunct faculty who have our additional staff faculty who are teaching in the areas of engineering technology who are of color. And so we are committed to increasing the faculty as well as our administrative staff to look like our students and make sure that we're providing an opportunity for students to feel comfortable and build relationships with the faculty where the faculty will understand where they're coming from. And so that is where my goal is, to increasing diversity in our faculty and building relationships with students and making sure that the students have the support that they need to be successful.
Anyone else want to just chime in on the board perspective in terms of diversity? And I know
I was previously served on the governance committee. I'm not on it now, but I know a focus is expanding the pool of the diversity pool of clients and expanding the number of women on the board also. I know we recently have like 4 board members added in the last like 18 months. I think 3 were people of color, and there was sometimes there's a need. We also seek diverse skills, and sometimes there's a skill that you bring someone on for, and that person may not be a person of color. But I know it's the current governance committee is very committed and focused on that, and that's why our latest board member was a woman of color from Roxbury.
Oh, and I do have one more thing I do want to mention, that one of the things that we're also working, I'm personally working on, is building cultural pedagogy into the curriculum, so that it's not just the faculty of color that need to serve the students, but our faculty who are not of color, appreciate and understand what our students are going through, particularly during this time of chaos that's happening in our country. So, that is something that I'm also working on as well.
I really appreciate that, actually, Marvin. In my time before being a city councilor, was deeply engaged in education advocacy, still am as a councilor, but was calling for and still calling for a decolonized curricula for Boston Public Schools. And so I love when anybody is really trying to tackle the curriculum, make sure that we're bringing different perspectives in and really decentering this notion of Western civilization, the way we were all kind of indoctrinated into that coming up through school and elsewhere. So I appreciate that work. I think it's critically important, particularly given your student population.
Mm-hmm.
Let me, unless someone else wanted to chime in, I want to make sure that we are getting through the questions that people took the time to submit. So I just want to make sure that we're kind of getting through some of those questions. There was a question here about the sale. Let me find it. It says right now, nope, I'm missing it. Excuse me. It was a question about the sale, the proceeds of the sale, how you were going to use that. I can't find the question exactly, but it was a question about the sale and how those proceeds. So tell me, at what point will you have to make a decision? Like, again, coming to the timeline, the resources that are needed to keep you viable and assure you that you are on the right track. So if you don't get that 3 million or that 8 million, I'm not sure if it's 3 million with the 5 million on top to bring it to 8 million, by what date? What does this mean in terms of we have to make a decision to merge by this date or not to merge, or we have to make a plan to do whatever your next steps are going to be?
So financially, what we need is the run room, which essentially means, do you have enough money in your bank to run operations to get all of the students who are enrolled through their degree programs. That is the calculation that we are making when we're saying we need this additional $5 million. There's a whole set of calculations that are made by our accreditors, the New England Commission on Higher Education, and also by the state Department of Higher Education that has to do with your solvency. So we need 18 months of money, of cash in the bank. And so that $5 million between now and December would get us the 18 months of run room that we need. But we have to think about the fact that we had a low enrollment this year. So we know that unless enrollment goes like gangbusters, which given the circumstances and the climate, it looks like it probably won't. I mean, things could change, but probably won't. That's why we need the additional money for the calendar year 2021. And so this is money that it is really required of us to have, so that if something happened, if the sky fell, which that we would be able to teach out the students that we have. So that's a little bit of higher ed inside baseball, but that's where the way it works. It's not that we have to have it because we just want to sit on it. It is required by our accreditors to demonstrate that we are in good fiscal standing.
So that's helpful, that you need that money by December to show that you've got the 18 months. So that,
yes,
that helps. Just in terms of, I guess, my question is around the tuition. So my sense is that you're able to serve largely men of color who are coming through Boston Public Schools. I don't know if you also track that as one of your data points, like how many of your students are BPS kids.
40%.
Excellent. Thank you for that, because that's very important to me. And assuming that we want to keep costs down for them, obviously I do. This is why I introduced the hearing order around student debt. How do we, get more money in? You mentioned that you're serving 500 plus students now, but didn't you mention earlier that you can serve 1,000? So you're operating what, at half the capacity? That's obviously a big financial hit, yes?
That's correct.
And is that because of COVID? You feel like that hit, the enrollment went down because of COVID, or was there some other thing in play already in terms of a steady decline in enrollment over the years, or was it like a COVID thing? Can you talk us through that?
Sure. So historically, I don't actually know what our highest enrollment has ever been historically, but I would say over the past 15 years, our highest enrollment has been about 600. And we were able to sustain ourselves at that number. What happened is in the market of higher education period, when we were in a boom economy, people were working instead of going to college. And so many schools experienced a decrease in enrollment. We had an increase in enrollment for a period of time. And then over the past 2 or 3 years, our enrollment was pretty flat at around 550 students. That's still not the volume that we need in order for our model to work without the additional philanthropy, right? So if we weren't to get additional philanthropy, if we stayed at 550 students and continued to raise $3 million a year, right? We know that that's not sustainable. So we either need to get more students or get more philanthropy. We also introduced 2 years ago a business development model, which is our way of getting the corporate investment. That is particularly for students who are, they're adult learners who work at institutions or work with companies, and they're retraining. So their companies are paying for their incumbent workforce to get retrained. And so through that new income stream, new revenue stream, so this is something we have been thinking about as an institution. So how can we get more revenue in? We've raised $600,000 this fiscal year through that income stream. So those things are working, but not as fast as the market is shifting. And then what happened with COVID is that we had a very unexpected unexpected is, I put that in air quotes because around March, I think we started thinking that this was going to happen, but an unplanned for dip in enrollment. And so that is what is causing the short-term cash crunch that we have right now. So I think those are the those are the factors that are at play, which is one of the reasons why it's really, looking at it, it's just this perfect storm of all of the systemic inequities, hitting at the same at once. At the same time, we recognize the fact that, yes, we do need to get more students, infusion of cash, and some different creative ways to think about lowering our fixed costs, which I will just mention that we did do that in May. We also experienced and went through a reduction in force that was pretty significant. So we cut programs and we reduced staff in anticipation of this rough patch. And if it were not for that, I think we would be in a much worse situation than we are now. And it is still serious, but we have tightened our belts as much as we can, which is why we're looking now externally for the support that we need. We have, gotten our internal house in order. We have a great CFO. Everyone at the college internally is focused on what it is that we need to do to preserve the capital we have. At this point, we need more resources.
Great, thank you. And I want us to continue to think about how to do that. And I know we are running close to our end of time, so there's just a few more questions, if I may. And this one is from Richard Taylor, who is wondering about the land that you've purchased in Nubian Square. And he is asking if there is a merger, whether or not the land will be sold within a certain time frame. That there should be, if it is going to be sold, that it should be ready to sell right away, so that there isn't speculation and the property doesn't remain blighted. That the development team must have diversity on all levels and work with local elected officials and Nubian Square stakeholders. I guess those are more statements than questions, but if anyone wants to respond to that, I would add to just a question around linkage and whether or not you guys are tapping into linkage around your job training programs, or how might we, again, to this question about resources, tap into what is available. So I don't know if anyone wants to respond to the comments from Mr. Taylor.
I'll just say in response to Richard's comments, I think our first priority is to make sure that that property gets used for the purposes of supporting students and the mission. And I think it would be at least on the table as a condition of any sort of partnership that anybody that we're collaborating with know that we want to figure out how to use that land and develop it for that purpose. I think, though, in the spirit of needing to figure out the assistance and the help that we need, I think we need the help of developers like Mr. Taylor to figure out how we either independently affordably get there, or in partnership with the right developers or anybody that we're in partnership in academia as well. I mean, we're sold on the purpose of that land, and there are incredible plans, not the least of which are Mr. Taylor's, for Nubian Square. And so I think we want to figure out how do we lift all boats in this.
And then, Madam President, to your question about our access to linkage funds through the Neighborhood Jobs Trust, through NJT, Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology is a recipient of various workforce development grants that benefit our students. And we have a very close relationship with that office, as well as the Office of Workforce Development. And I think, what we're talking about in terms of leverage from the city, are really things that are door openers for us into the private sector. It doesn't mean that there might not be more that the public sector can do, but to your point, this isn't all on the city. in terms of funds. And we are very grateful to be part of the tuition-free community college program, even though we are not a community college. Again, we're an independent college, and we have a public mission. And so there are ways that the mayor is an ex officio member of our board. Chris Osgood, who's the chief of streets, is our advocate and who represents the mayor on the board. This organization, the Institute, has a very long and storied history with the city of Boston, and used to actually be essentially a quasi governmental agency, and was very closely tied to the city, and the city owned the land on which the school sits, as you referred to. So I just want to thank all of the city officers and the people at the city that we work with for the ways that they have supported BFIT. It's just, we really need an additional, we just need to go deeper.
Yep.
And be more creative.
Well, here we are, and I think this is going to be the last question, and this is getting back to just the students. So we're right now, we're still in a pandemic. What COVID-19 protocols are being put in place as this merger is happening? What are you going to guarantee? How are you going to guarantee the safety of students, faculty, staff, workers, in addition to the surrounding communities? And what I guess I would add to that question, that's about the safety of students. We're talking a lot about that as BPS is debating, you know, we've went back into the red zone. We have to kind of manage how we are bringing students and staff back into buildings. So a question is, how are you guys doing that? And then I would add to that question, you know, again, looking at enrollment and the dip in enrollment. And if you can get more students in, obviously that will help you with some of the money that you need. Obviously, it's not going to make up the lion's share because we're not putting that on the backs of your students. But, you know, a question that I have just thinking about COVID and its impact on our city and on our community is many folks have been laid off. Many folks have been put out of work. Many folks, this in some ways is an opportunity to really think about those who are trying to reposition themselves in the workforce. Is there a certificate that they could get from the Ben Franklin Institute? Is there a degree that they could get from the Ben Franklin Institute that would then put them on a path, a more secure path? Because so many folks have been laid off if they weren't able to easily transition through Zoom and using other technologies. So I guess a question is, one, how are we keeping students and staff safe during COVID? I assume much of this has moved remotely like the rest of the world, but I also want to know then how are we using, you know, the worst pandemic that certainly we've seen in our lifetime. How do we then say, okay, a lot of people are out of work. How do we get Ben Franklin Institute in front of them as a viable option? How do we use this as an opportunity to build enrollment? And then I would, after the question, I'll allow everyone closing comments as we wrap this conversation up and talk about next steps. Anyone want to take on the question about keeping students and staff safe, but also how do we then say, okay, we've got, the workforce is changing too because of COVID. And
That's
because
right.
of remote work is going to be with us for some time, even when it's safe to get back into buildings with each other. So the way we work, the way, I mean, we always talk about the 21st century jobs and that the economy, you know, was changing anyway in terms of jobs, but this is a whole new level of change that's being added. And so how do we use that to kind of drum up support for the institution and build enrollment?
Absolutely. So I'm going to take the safety question, and then I will pivot to Dr. Loasu. I have not addressed you by your title tonight. So in terms of safety, that is absolutely first and paramount for us. We were shut down from March to June. And in July, we introduced a pilot program to bring students back with all of the safety protocols that are required by the city and the state in order to do that. We did that without incident and have engaged special safety consultants. You know, we have hired additional janitorial staff and have put in place self-reporting and periodic on-site testing protocols so that a subset of students can come in for hands-on training in certain fields. So there are only certain students and certain faculty who are allowed on campus in industries where we thought it would be put them at a disadvantage in terms of their job outcomes if you are an auto mechanic, an auto technician who has never touched an engine in your formal training. And so that's an example. So there's a very reduced population that is coming on site for some training. And Marvin, would you like to please talk about the way in which we're thinking about using this time of the pandemic to really leverage some of the retraining and upskilling that we know is needed right now when there's 13% unemployment in the state?
Yeah, so we're definitely interested in working with those population of students. We have been trying to work with organizations like Mass Hire and high set centers, GED centers, and working with several different organizations that is providing support for those students who are outplaced from their work. The issue is that many influencers are talking to students about, not taking out any loans. And so there is a misunderstanding of the type of loans that we offer at Benjamin Franklin, which is the federal loans. We don't encourage students to take out private loans. And so we work with students with using just the federal loans, which is the better loan to get because the interest rate is lower, fees are lower, and it's maxed out to a certain amount, which is depending on the student's eligibility, it could be between $5,500 and $9,500. And so the return on their investment that they would be getting on that is that they will get a job that will pay off that loan. It's not going to be a situation that where they're taking out $120,000 of loan debt with a job that's paying them $30,000 a year. Ours is the reverse. The students are taking out at max maybe about $12,000 in loans, and they're going to get a job that's going to pay them $40,000 to $50,000 a year. So I think that there's just a misunderstanding from many influencers that are telling students not to take out loans. Don't do that. And a lot of folks who are very conscious about their funding are choosing not to pursue a place like Benjamin Franklin that could serve them really well. So those are some of the conversations that our admissions and financial aid team has got to have with a lot of those population of students. High school students are a little bit different, so we can have those conversations with them and their families, telling them that there's an investment. But when you're talking about adult student, it's a little different conversation because they're so conscious about taking out loans, particularly those students who are first generation and don't have an understanding of the different types of loans that are out there. So we're working with that. We're trying to build that. And I think that the way that we're trying to communicate with students about their options and their the opportunities that they have with the investments that they're making by coming to BFIT, Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology. So I think that will allow for us to think about different options for students to be successful in a career. So
yeah, I can appreciate that the counseling that people have been told not to get certain loans. I think the reality is that getting a job that makes $40,000 a year, you're going to have difficulty paying off $12,000. The same way if you had a job at $100,000 and your debt was $60,000, like it's difficult. I don't want to put this on the backs of whether they're coming straight out of BPS or whether they're adult learners. I had a hearing order on student debt because I think that is a huge issue that is really crippling our nation and our workforce. So I appreciate that your tuition is much lower and that the debt would be much lower. I can appreciate all of that. But I think one of the best things that came out of this conversation in terms of a takeaway for me is I really want to figure out how we leverage private industry to pay for the education at the front end, not say, oh, now you can get a job and pay off all this debt. No, come pay it at the front end. And then I think that is the move. And I think the city of Boston can be an important partner in helping to leverage private industry to do that. Now, anytime we've asked private industry to step in to support all these various funds and things like that to respond to COVID. And I think there's a real opportunity to get folks to respond and invest at the front end. And so I would really like to pursue how we make that happen as the next step for me. I don't want to do all of the talking and I will wrap up at the end, but to me, that is the big takeaway. I wanted to offer Dr. Francis, you and your team, the opportunity for closing comments, and then I will do my thank yous and hopefully we will have some good next steps to follow up on.
Certainly. Well,
Does
I
that
want to
make
thank.
sense?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Thank you again, Madam President. We really appreciate you for offering this forum and your team for convening it and gathering the participation of Senator Sonia Chang Diaz and Representative John Santiago. I think in closing, I would say, and speaking to the virtual audience there, that we are committed to retaining the impact of this mission and the impact of a unique institution in Boston. I encourage you to please join us in creative thinking and creative action steps about what that looks like. I am available. I'm easy to find. It's afrancis@bfit.edu. Some people have already reached out to me. We are very much in a phase of really following up on every lead and looking under every rock and making sure that no stone has gone unturned in our efforts to be as resilient as possible and be the institution that we know that the city of Boston and greater Boston, really the region, needs us to be in order to be a pipeline for the tech and trade workforce that's going to keep this city humming. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd offer closing comments from your team as well. Who would like to go next?
I'll go next, Madam President. And again, want to join Dr. Francis in thanking you and the Senator and the Representative for your time and the audience's time this evening. Frankly, this is a story that we should have been telling about Benjamin Franklin for a long time, both the wild success that we've realized over time, but also how hard it is to produce this success and why we find ourselves at this point. What I am most encouraged by immediately in this conversation is that you've heard us. In the talk back that we've had with one another, I think you understand where we are and we are encouraged by your willingness to help. Our short-term challenges are acute. And we've got the added challenge of having to reinvent ourselves. But I'm going to argue to everybody watching this that out of the 35 colleges in the city of Boston, the 75 in the region, we may be the best positioned for reinvention. And we may be best equipped to show up in a very different and future-looking way for students of color in the Boston area. And as Dr. Francis said, we're in the process of investigating and exhausting all options, as Senator Chang Diaz asked, but I want people to understand that we are not reinventing merely for survival. We are reinventing because we see exciting possibilities for higher ed and workforce development, and we see ourselves at the leading edge of that work. What I would ask of the public sector, the private sector, philanthropy, is let's talk about the support that we need and support us. Let's not just talk about it, but let's actually have you support us. To families, make us a school of choice. Make us the place that is at the top of your list for where young people in your family are going. We want Boston's young people, and even under these challenging times, under COVID, get started on your post-secondary career, continue your post-secondary career. We offer a great amount of flexibility for students to continue even under the duress that this situation is creating. So we want the opportunity to do that with you. To your point, Madam President, I don't just want a student's entry into Ben Franklin to be the beginning of an academic career that quite potentially produces debt. I actually want it to be provisional employment for our students, where coming in the door, you build a relationship with an employer, you're earning income, you're gaining status in a company while you learn. And that company is making its investment in you. I think we can produce a very different model. So we really do welcome your partnership and appreciate that you both see the vision that we have and the challenges that we're facing. So thank you.
I repeat the thanks that others have shared, Madam President. And I would just say it's not always typical that people like to talk about their financial shortcomings, but sort of it's imperative of us in this moment that we have to say, you know, this is our time of need, as has been outlined now. We need resources by the end of the year to be able to show that we can teach out for 18 months. And that's imperative to a lot of financial folks that look at us and want to make sure that we don't go the way of other colleges that have had to make abrupt exits. So we're doing all we can, but we appreciate the opportunity to sort of publicly come out with this statement.
Thank you.
I echo what everybody is saying, and I do want to just say that, you know, if you ever want to hear what we do in terms of our students, we're changing our students' lives, and I have many stories that we could share about how we have done that. And, you know, so I would love, you know, if you're interested in learning any of that, well, I'll be happy to sit down and talk to anybody who's interested in listening to it.
I guess I'm closing up. Madam President, thank you for your time. Thank you to the senator and the representative. I know they're not with us right now, but thank them as well. And I just want to echo what my colleagues are saying. There is a real opportunity for people to rise up, and not just with their voices, but also with their checkbooks. And there have been many moments of campaigns and other things that have happened where people said, you know, what really can be done? How can I do something? It's merely a drop in the bucket. And I can tell you that enough drops go in the bucket and the bucket falls. So what we need to do is we need to encourage anyone and everyone, whether you are a captain of industry or whether you are a member of community, to step forward and to show their support for Benjamin Franklin. And so we need time, we need talent, we need treasure, and we need people to step forward and to do that. So please click on support BFIT, BFIT, excuse me, support BFIT on our website. And please reach out, ajohnson@bfit.edu. And happy to have those conversations and those thoughts as well. We really need people to step forward to help us, because it's going to take a village. It's going to take a group of us to do this. It's not something that can just be done by those of us that are on this conversation right now.
Indeed, indeed. Perfect words to end on. I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you, Dr. Francis. Thank you to the members of your team, as well as the board, for being here and for responding immediately, right away. As soon as the brouhaha hit the press, you guys were very receptive, willing to have conversation with community, and that is so important. And so I'm really grateful that you've made yourselves available to engage community in what your next steps may be, and to just share the realities that you have for your institution in terms of the financial difficulties. And my hope and goal is that we will come together as a community, as a city, all of the entities that Mr. Dorsey named, and that we will support this institution. So thank you, Dr. Francis, to you, your team, and the board for being here. I also want to thank my colleagues in government, Senator Sonia Chang Diaz and Representative John Santiago, for their participation this evening, but more than that, for their partnership and their leadership in this work overall. I also want to thank the viewers and offer an apology. So we've had some difficulties with technology, like many folks are having, and we had hoped to have this happening live, and maybe it is, I'm not sure, but we will certainly share it out. I want to thank all who submitted questions in advance. That certainly helped shape this conversation and this dialogue. It is important that people stay engaged, so I hope viewers will stay engaged, not just around this issue, but the broader issues concerning Nubian Square in our community and the city of Boston overall. So thank you for your participation, and my deepest apologies that we weren't able to work out our technology issues. And then finally, I just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my team members, and certainly the staff of Sonia and John, but most important to my team members for all of their work behind the scenes. And so I want to give my deepest gratitude to my Chief of Staff, Samuel Hurtado, to Kiera Lockett, who is my Director of Operations, to Michaela Parkin, who is my Policy Director, and to Danny Hutchins, who is our Constituent Service Specialist. So many thanks to my team for making this happen. We had a few bumps in the road, but we're here, and the most important thing is that we continue this dialogue and can follow it up with concrete action. So I look forward to continuing the conversation and how we really move the work forward and making sure that Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology continues to be an institute that serves communities of color, particularly men of color, particularly now. Now more than ever, we need a Benjamin Franklin Institute that is educating and training our workforce. So I'm grateful that we've had this conversation, and more grateful that we will continue the work together. So thank you, everyone who's tuned in. Thank you for being part of this work and helping us move the city forward. So thank you, and a very good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.